And with me is Congressman Steven Horsford. I have an ex-brother-in-law named Stephen Dorshow who almost got me this morning. But you've been a busy man. You got what is it? An election? You get to appointed to the Black Congressional Caucus. How does that work?
Yep. Well, first, it's great to be back on, Ed. It's great to be on your show. Congratulations on your continued success and just the impact that you make on our community. I'm proud to represent the 4th Congressional District. That's my first job, is fighting for the people, 700,000 people who elect me to do a job every day on their behalf. And I'm committed every single day to do that. I'm honored that in a leadership role I was selected by my colleagues in the Congressional Black Caucus to serve as chair. There are 60 members of the CBC. It's the largest in our history. We've been around 52 years. We started back in 1971 with 13 members, including Shirley Chisholm, the first black woman to run for President of the United States. And now we have 60 members, 31 who are black women. And so we represent every region of the country, every ideological perspective within the Congress, but we come together and we focus on how we can advance the issues of our communities. And it's not just about Black America, because we also represent very diverse districts, including like the one I represent here in Nevada. And we work in coalition with the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, the Congressional Asian Pacific Islander Caucus, and others to help advance the issues that matter to our constituents.
And when you talk about diversity, you work in one of the most diverse districts anywhere in the country. I mean, we have parts of Nye County and some of the other counties up north, as well as,
population Mineral, center. Lincoln. It's 50,000 square miles throughout the state. It's one of the larger congressional districts in the country, and it's a diverse both demographically and geographically, but it's Nevada. And it's really the growing representation of what America will become. My district is 34% Latino. It is about 19% African American. We've doubled the population with Asian American, Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander, and I have 5 tribal nations represented in our district, and a lot of working class people that represent every background who work hard every single day. And I'm proud to be their representative, to be their voice, and to fight for the issues that they care about every single day in Congress.
And that's why Nevada is so important in national politics, because it's so diverse, and here you are at the heartbeat of that. But how does that help Nevadans? You being the head of, I mean, it sounds so prestigious and it sounds powerful, but how does it really help those at home?
So let me give you an example. One of the biggest issues that my constituents are talking about right now is the cost of rent, the affordability of housing, the fact that 30% of the homes in parts of my district, especially in North Las Vegas, are owned by these hedge funds, these corporate landlords who've come in, paid cash, priced out veterans, priced out first-time home buyers, priced out families from owning a piece of the American dream. So this is an issue that I have helped to advance by introducing legislation. But because of the relationships and the leadership, it's also something that I'm able to build support for with and among my colleagues. Because it doesn't only affect North Las Vegas or Southern Nevada. It affects a lot of other communities, but guess what? That particular issue, they've been targeting communities of color, Black and Latino communities, communities with women who are the head of household. So to be able to go to my colleagues and say, hey, look, there's this issue and I know that it affects your constituents similar to mine. Will you join with me? Will you co-sponsor this legislation? Will you help me advocate to get this bill across the finish line? And because of it, it's now part of the vice president's agenda and what she's talking about around her opportunity economy, because we cannot create the American dream if we leave certain people out. We can't close the racial wealth gap if we favor big corporations and corporate landlords over those of us who are just trying to buy our first home, build a little bit of equity, put our kids through college, start a business. That's what the majority of us use our homes for when we buy it, is to get ahead. And unfortunately, that is something that is becoming a little bit more evasive, and I'm working to fix that.
And it does affect everybody. I mean, my kids are all in that age when they're getting married and get close to 30.
Yep.
The price of housing, the price of apartments.
Yes.
I mean, one is connected to the other, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, you talked about hedge funds coming in and buying houses. It's I guess the cheapest houses that they're buying, the ones in the neighborhood that are look at it. Well, that's a tear down. Let me
Right.
bring it up to snuff a little bit and rent it out and boost up the rent and make some money.
Right.
Right.
Well, and I don't begrudge mom and pop landlords, people who are buying 1 or 2 or 10 homes even,
right,
to do exactly what you described. My bill actually goes after these corporate enterprises that own 50 or more units.
So is
under
there
the
going
law.
to be a limit on
Yeah,
how many?
it's 50 or more, and they own hundreds. In one day in 2023, one company bought almost 300 homes in Southern Nevada. 3 companies own 30% of the market here. And to your point, there's evidence that they're manipulating the market. Even if they buy them and they put it up for rent, they're charging more for the rent than the same house across the street. They typically have higher rates of eviction. They don't maintain the properties at the same level, which then lowers the value and destabilizes the neighborhood for all the rest of us. So in one block, 70% of the homes are backed by the federal government through Fannie and Freddie, and then these corporate landlords who came in and paid cash are actually devaluing everybody else's property.
Right.
So my legislation, the Home Act, goes after this. It's comprehensive. But to your question, it's about building a reputation that I can work with anyone from any background. I work with Republicans on this issue too, because they're affected by it.
Right.
Because it's something.
How many Republicans do you have in the Black Caucus?
So currently, there's not a member of the Republicans who are members. They are allowed to be. It's not an exclusion, and we have had Black Republicans.
Just the politics of
it's a choice.
Yeah.
To join the Congressional Black Caucus.
Yeah. But look, you identified, I think, probably the most important issue to Nevadans. It's like buying houses, affording groceries, that type of thing. Yeah. Recently, Trump came in here, made a huge announcement about, hey, I'm not going to tax tips. Mm-hmm. Now, I get the impression that when he makes these grand announcements like that, he just makes them. It hasn't really figured out the how am I going to do it part of it. Yeah. But then a few weeks later, Vice President Harris came in and did the same thing, right? Hey, we're going to do something about not taxing tips mm-hmm. on tip earners,
right?
Right. So how would that work?
Mm-hmm. So let me break it down, and I really appreciate you bringing up the issue. So here in Nevada, a really large percentage of our workforce is in tipped jobs, and because of our standard, fortunately, because we have a state minimum wage that's higher than the federal minimum wage, it's not only their tips that they're using to achieve the income that they need to pay for their household expenses. But 6 million Americans today work in jobs that pay as little as $2.13 an hour.
You can still do that. It's up to the state to set that minimum wage, and they have exceptions for people who make tips.
Over 30, I believe it's 38 states allow a sub-minimum wage as low as $2.13 an hour. Now, to me, that's poverty wages.
Yeah, for sure.
This is from Jim Crow era practices when coming out of slavery. People were working in service sector jobs. They did not want to pay them livable wages, and so they gave them a sub-minimum wage. So what the Vice President, Kamala Harris, has proposed goes further than Donald Trump, and hers is based on what the workers of Nevada, particularly the hospitality culinary workers, have shared with her over years, not showing up at a rally, just throwing out a slogan. It's about listening to what the workers actually have to say on this issue. And what they've said is, number one, let's raise the wage for everyone, because no one should make less than a livable wage. Number two, let's eliminate the sub-minimum wage so no one in America makes as little as $2.13 an hour. And third, let's not tax the tips as federal income. Why? Because a tip is a gift, it's not a guarantee. Unfortunately, customers don't have to tip.
And there's no taxes on tips if it's under a certain amount, right? You're allowed to give it, what was it, $10,000 or so?
Yeah, there's
a gift.
Correct. But when that is what is expected for that worker, and unfortunately we also have industry that benefits because they count those tips as income, and that is what allows them to pay in some places as little as $2.13. So the point I'm trying to make is the Vice President's plan is much more comprehensive. It goes to the root of the issue, which is workers deserve to get paid a livable wage, and that on the issue of tips, whether it's here in Nevada or elsewhere, we shouldn't tax something that is a gift because it's not a guarantee, and it actually ensures that we have more equitable and fair tax policy. Instead of giving tax breaks to the very wealthy, let's give the tax breaks to the workers who make our city run.
How does it work now? I mean, you at one time were involved in the culinary union.
I ran the training
You ran it.
I ran
the training center.
Yeah.
Where you train everybody how to be bartenders, that type of thing,
yes.
right?
Cooks, food servers, guest room attendants.
So when it comes to tips now, particularly in the casinos, some of them pull their tips
and have to share their tips.
Them, right.
So even though a customer tips the food server, that food server then has to share that tip with the bartender, the food attendant, the food runner, other people who were involved in that, serving that customer. So it's not even all going to that worker.
Right.
It's being shared across a bunch of other people, which also is another reason that we should not tax this as federal income. The other issue is that there's a big issue. I literally had to bring the culinary workers into a negotiation with the IRS during the pandemic. They were still making them pay their federal income tax on tips during the pandemic.
When they weren't making
the money. When our restaurants were closed or they were shuttered, or even some of them were on unemployment because they average it over 3 years. And I went to the IRS. I don't work for the federal government. I work for 700,000 people here in Nevada who elect me to do a job.
Right.
And a lot of my constituents are people in unions, and including the culinary and the bartenders union. So they came to me and they said, hey, can you help us out? And I said, okay, what do we need to do? And we said, we need to bring the IRS into a meeting so that we can explain to them how this actually works. And it wasn't just the workers. I had the industry leaders at the same meeting, the tax experts that work for the major hotels, because they were also like, this is just cumbersome. So by eliminating the tax on tips, by raising the wage, we actually get rid of all of this bureaucratic process that doesn't really raise a lot of money for the federal treasury. It will help workers, and it'll raise the standard so more workers get paid a livable wage.
And am I correct in thinking that this also helps the businesses? Is this all, because when a worker is paying tax on tips, that becomes income to the worker, and it becomes a match to the employer in having to match that for Social Security and unemployment benefits, that type of thing.
That's right, and that's one of the reasons that I'm working with industry with the Nevada Restaurant and National Restaurant Associations, with the resort industry, because we do have to have a policy that works for everyone. You know, I understand that the jobs that we create are when we have, you know, companies and small businesses and restaurants that are successful. So whatever policy we ultimately adopt has to be one that can work for the workers and work for the businesses that we're seeking to support.
You know, Congressman, one of the things that I've always acknowledged and appreciated about you is that you have a lot of personal experience on a lot of these issues. Two of the issues that I don't know how much you really talk about it, but two of the issues are guns and immigration. You know, your dad was passed because involving a gun, and your mother was an immigrant, right, from Trinidad.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, so you have real life experience in both these issues, and you know, you're in favor of making whatever changes you can make in some of the guns, bump stocks and closing the loophole. I mean, you know, kind of the easy stuff, you know, but it's not going to really, like, look, today, as we're filming this, there was a shooting in Georgia, in a school. You know, so, but the real change, I mean, that's not going to stop people from killing people.
Right.
Right? I mean, is there really a solution? And what is it with us Americans that we have all these children dying because of guns?
Yeah. Well, my father was shot and killed. He was working as a cook, in fact, at a local convenience store. And someone came in to rob the store, and the guy got kicked out, and he came back with a shotgun. My dad took a bullet to the chest, died on the way to the hospital in an ambulance.
How old were you?
I was 19. I was a freshman in college at the University of Nevada, Reno. I got a call, like too many of my constituents, people every single day somewhere in America, 100 people die from gun violence in America every single day. And so that was a very pivotal moment in my life. And part of the reason that I'm in public service and work in the community today is because I decided in that moment and at his funeral that I wanted to do something to make things better in my community, not to make them worse or to contribute to the problem.
You ever catch the person that shot him?
No. But on the 30th anniversary of my father's death, I introduced a bill called Break the Cycle of Violence. It is a bill that actually a portion of it got included in the Bipartisan Safer Communities law, which was signed by President Biden. It invests funding into evidence-based programs to actually stop crime before it happens, to really deal with the root causes that contribute to violence in our communities, including gun violence. It funds both faith-based and nonprofit organizations to get kids off the streets and get them into positive environments where they can get training and workforce and a job, because I believe that the greatest opportunity that you can give someone instead of a bullet is a job, is an opportunity, is an education. And finally, it breaks the cycle of violence because it really disrupts this cycle. We keep talking about the cycle of gun violence in our communities. And so this is legislation that, again, I worked on with a number of other members of Congress, with advocates, with people right here in Nevada who have been affected by gun violence, including Jerian Coleman, who was a young man who was shot in the face at Cheyenne High School, and who could have turned that shooting into a reason for him to retaliate, a reason to become bitter, a reason to have a life full of crime. Now he's an advocate helping other young people understand how to actually disrupt and break the cycle of violence.
Well, see, I love what you're onto, because you're not talking about guns being bad. You're talking about changing behavior of people. I have a daughter who just moved to Israel last week. Okay. So I was talking to her on the phone, and she was taking a bus from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem at night. Yeah. And I said, you know, is it safe to take the bus? She walked the bus. She said, Dad, everybody here is carrying an Uzi on the bus. It's the safest place I could be. Now, I'm not suggesting everybody carry an Uzi, but what I'm saying is the difference is you can live in a society, and they do it in Israel, where there's not a whole lot of gun violence and deaths in Israel. Everybody has guns. It's not necessarily the guns, but it's exactly what you're saying. It's how do we give people opportunity? And it goes back to the housing, too. Because I think I've read in the past, there's research that people who live in houses that pay mortgages, that are those kind of citizens, are always less prone to commit crimes.
Well, they have a stake in their community, and this is the thing. You can't push people to the point where they don't have value and dignity in our society and in the stake of our community. I love my community. I love where I was born and raised here in Las Vegas, in the historic West Side in North Las Vegas. I love the people that I grew up with, that I attended high school with. I love, you know, my colleagues today that care deeply about the city that we are, but more importantly, the city we will become. But we have to have leaders who know how to bring us together, not divide us. I believe in building up community, not tearing them down. And, you know, when it comes to the issue of safety in our communities, I believe every community deserves to be safe. I don't think it should only be for those who live behind gated communities. I want to live safely in my neighborhood. I want seniors to live safely. I want kids to be able to go to school. I want my kids to be able to go to a damn park and come home after playing basketball and not have violence in our communities. I also believe that we need to address this hate that we're seeing, whether it's anti-Semitic, Islamophobic, anti-Asian, anti-black, anti-immigrant.
I'll tell you anything.
Right. We all need to come together, and we need leaders who understand how to bring us together, not divide us.
You know, one of the best things, in my opinion, that the President Biden did during his term of office was creating all this money for the infrastructure. What was the name of that bill? It was
Bipartisan infrastructure and jobs law. We always forget the jobs part.
Okay. Well, look, as great as the legislation was, I don't understand why we haven't marketed it correctly. You know, there's nothing more frustrating to be driving on the freeway in Las Vegas. Everywhere you go, there's construction, construction, construction. You know, I mean, it's by the time you get somewhere, you're so stressed out, right? Now, when you think about it, all of this is money that the Biden administration has put into roads and bridges and infrastructure and jobs, right? And it's a positive thing. So why didn't we put signs that your tax dollars at work? This is what, you know, President Biden has done in creating, you know, this money so you can have better roads, better highways, better housing, better utilities, the whole whatever included.
Yep, you're absolutely right, and they have started to add that. We had Secretary Buttigieg here for the announcement of the transit improvements along
the train. You talking about the train?
Well, there's the train too, the high-speed train, but that's a great project because of all the jobs it's going to bring and the opportunity to connect Las Vegas to Southern California. But the transit is about veterans being able to get to their doctor's appointment at the VA hospital in North Las Vegas. It's about students who are taking the bus from the northwest part of my district in Centennial Hills down to UNLV. It's about, you know, the mom who's working 2 jobs who has to pick up her kid. We need better infrastructure so that they have a better quality of life. Infrastructure is not this thing that is done to us. It's what we use every single day as people to be able to get around and to do the things we have to do in our lives. Go to the doctor, go to the grocery store, pick up our kids from childcare, go to work. And yes, the Bipartisan Infrastructure and Jobs Act does that. And in Nevada, we were able to secure $6 billion from that vote. So I'm proud of the legislation. I'm proud to have voted for it. And yes, we should do more to make it more tangible for people. But what I try to do is break it down. I have a thing called Commuting with Your Congressman, where I've actually gotten on the RTC bus and I bring my constituent services to the constituents.
Yeah.
Those are constituents that can't come to my town halls. They can't necessarily come to my district office. So we have to be able to take the stuff to them, and they're the ones who need it the most.
Yeah, especially in some of the counties that you're in.
For sure.
But look, I only have a minute or two, 1 minute left, and I know you wanted to talk about this DEI thing. What is that?
Well, look, a big part of the work that I've been doing is about making sure that we address creating opportunity for everyone, and that we have a fully inclusive economy. This is what the Vice President's been talking a lot about. It's an opportunity economy where everyone has a chance to get ahead. So at a time when there are forces who are trying to take away the tools of opportunity, whether that's for businesses to have access to capital, for students to go to college, for businesses to invest in diversity and inclusion, we need to make sure that we're creating those doors for everyone. Not to the exclusion of anyone, but for the inclusion of everyone, whether that's in the workforce, whether that's in contracting, or whether that's investing. So a big part of what I've been trying to do is hold corporate America accountable to the commitments that they made after George Floyd's death in 2020, and to make sure that they continue to meet their own business imperatives around diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ed.
Hey, and we have an early voting coming up very shortly.
October 19th, start to get out to vote. Ballots will drop in early October. Look, this is a consequential election. I don't take anybody's vote for granted. I'm asking for people to continue to support me. I'm honored to serve as their representative, but let's get out there and have our voices heard. And the best way to do that is at the ballot box in November.
And let's get some of these common sense ideas finished that you have.
All right.
Hey, thank you. Congressman Steve Horsford.